Welcome to State Matters. I'm your host, Matt Muratore. Transportation for the underserved is an issue in every community. In the Greater Plymouth Area, there are folks working to improve on this problem. Joining me today is the Director of the Center for Active Living in Plymouth, Jennifer Young, and local businessman and business coach, Will Shain, who will discuss a pilot program they are working on for our community. Well, thank you both for joining me today. I really appreciate that. We always start our show trying to learn a little bit more of our guests. And I know, Jen, you were on earlier, a year or so ago, but just remind people who is Jennifer Young, and you may have had an addition to your family since then.
I absolutely have. My name is Jennifer Young. I'm the Director for Elder Affairs for the Town of Plymouth, as well as the Director for the newly titled Center for Active Living.
I love that title.
It's
a great title.
We are so fortunate that the town has absolutely supported our transition from the Council on Aging to the Center.
But the state really hasn't yet, right?
The state has not. We are what I like to call in the forefront of a trickle-down effect.
Yeah, okay.
So we're very excited. We're one of the first two in the state that have actually transitioned over into a Center for Active Living.
Okay. Where was the other place?
Actually, it is Barnstable.
Really?
They're in the process of it.
So maybe that's something off air we'll talk about, maybe work on for a state level to get them all that way.
Absolutely.
Because it's funny when you go into I just want to say the senior center, the Center for Active Living, you see a lot of younger seniors that are active and doing a lot of great things.
We are not your great-grandfather's Council on Aging.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. Yeah.
Absolutely. We have Zumba, we have Birding 101 with some hiking involved in it. Mm-hmm. We have actually done bar fitness. We're working on some cardio programs.
Fitness?
Bar
Is that
fitness.
Drinking beer or something?
I'm sure some would like to think that. No, but it's a very exciting time for us at the center. And as you mentioned, it was about a year and a half ago when I was on the show with you. And I have had since my second child, Adeline. She just turned 1.
Yeah, that's great.
So it's been a busy year.
Yeah. That's great. Congratulations
Thank
on
you.
that, too. And I got to tell you, my favorite part of going to the Center for Active Living when I'm able to go is just going to that men's group. And if you're ever around on Friday, Will, just head into the men's group at 9 o'clock. It's just interesting, fascinating conversations that they have there.
I'm not privy to it.
Yeah, no, you only be a male.
I'll remember that.
Oh, that's great. That's great. So that's great. Well, thank you again. So Will Shain, you haven't been on this show before, but tell the folks you have a great background, really a business background, a business professional coaching background. So tell the people who is Will Shain.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity to be here, Matt. I'm Will Shain. I'm president of Peer Group Advisors. It's a boutique-y kind of consulting firm, but most people know me as TAB, or the Alternative Board. So I do work with small businesses around southeastern Massachusetts, companies that generally are under $15 or $20 million, or as small as $250,000. And I bring them into a board-like meeting once a month where they get a chance to share best practices, bring challenges they have, and talk in a confidential setting and just help each other out. And in between that, I'll offer individual one-on-one coaching services. I do some consulting, but for me, it's just about now managing to grow in this new balance in life I have, which is to work a little bit, play a little bit with my family, have some fun with volunteerism.
And what was your career in before?
I was all in medical devices, healthcare. I'm perfectly suited as a coach because I have a bachelor's degree in microbiology and a master's in cellular immunology. Doesn't quite get you into doesn't quite get you into business, but I started in R&D and worked my way into sales and marketing and biotechnology, and just kind of worked my way up the ladder, finishing up in a couple of vice presidential roles in sales, marketing, and then CEO of a startup company in Ohio.
Mm-hmm. And I'm impressed by the list of organizations that you belong to as well. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Sure. Well, part of the balance in life is it shouldn't just all be work. And anytime I can give back to the community, this is not a town that I grew up in. I'm a Connecticut-born lad, but I'm proud of the fact that I'm serving my second 5-year term as a trustee at Cape Cod Community College, thanks to you and others who supported me in the community. I'm on the board of directors for the Cape Cod Canal Region Chamber of Commerce and the National Marine Life Center. An active Plymouth Lion, and anything I can do that gives back a little bit more makes me just feel a little bit better, and I think it makes living a little bit more enriched.
And that's the great thing about this community that we live in here. It's just there's so many different types of people, but there are a lot of people that are looking to give back, people latter part of their careers, and I see that a lot at your place.
Absolutely.
There's a lot of people not just coming there to partake in the activities that are going there, they're coming there to really help volunteer and support and do Meals on Wheels and all sorts of stuff. It's just, you don't see that in a lot of communities, and I don't take it for granted. I don't think any of us take it for granted, but it's a great community because of people like you that are willing to give back. So we appreciate that.
It's worth it.
And you have a family?
I am. I'm married to Barbara. We've been together for 45 years in a married couple.
That's great.
We have,
don't hear that anymore either. That's great.
We have 2 daughters, 2 sons-in-laws, 3 grandkids who just departed after a 2-week vacation from the Midwest, and that's what life's about.
Good for you. Good for you. Well, you know, we're going to talk about transportation, as I said in the opening, and you know, so hearing your background, people are going to think, well, why is he involved with this transportation group? But really, because of your background, you were actually handpicked to be part of that, and we're going to talk about that in a minute. But let's talk a little bit about transportation in general. And maybe, Jen, you can talk about this from the perspective of the seniors, that you know, we could talk a little bit about GATRA and you know, what works, what doesn't work type thing.
Absolutely. Prior to being the director at the center, I was a social worker for 5 years. So I feel as though that experience has given me a lot of education and information about the current state of transportation in Plymouth, specifically from my experience for seniors. Right now, we rely heavily on volunteers to provide transportation for our seniors to medical appointments, all within regular business hours during the week, generally within the town limits of Plymouth. Occasionally, we're able to find a volunteer that will take a senior for a medical appointment into Duxbury, sometimes as far as Weymouth. Transportation into Boston is absolutely a challenge.
How many calls do you usually get roughly on a monthly basis for things like that?
Well, I can tell you, last year we were able to provide 711 rides.
In 1 year?
In 1 year.
And all volunteers doing that?
All volunteers. We have a roster of 12 to 15 volunteers through the center. And those rides were provided to approximately 90 individuals. And I can tell you that monthly, we are probably not meeting the needs of anywhere from 20 to 40 seniors.
Wow, okay.
Which is heartbreaking.
Sure.
You know, we're looking at seniors and working with seniors that not only have emergent medical needs, but also those that might have long-term medical issues, need to be on dialysis, are going in for chemotherapy treatments that do require a consistent schedule of availability. And many of these seniors do have children that are in the area. However, their children work full-time and have children as well. And they don't necessarily want to feel as though they're placing a burden on their own children. And I can understand that. So we're fortunate enough that we have a full-time resident volunteer, Michelle Foley, who helps find rides for people for medical transportation needs.
Interesting. Full-time volunteer.
She's a full-time volunteer.
Unbelievable.
We are blessed, absolutely blessed to have Michelle. And she has a heart of gold. She came from the medical field, so she actually is really able to connect with those that are looking for the services. She's even gone so far as to meet somebody down at one of the transportation points to make sure he gets on the right bus to go to Boston for his medical needs. Unbelievable, she's great. But that leads me into what else is available. GATRA does provide a service that runs to the Boston.
People at GATRA is, the people that don't know.
So GATRA is one of the local transportation authorities. It's the Greater Attleboro Transportation Regional Authority.
Correct, yeah.
Okay.
Right, yeah, yeah.
And currently they operate in Plymouth. They have a fixed
And they're
bus.
funded by the state.
Funded by the state, thank you. They have a fixed route system in Plymouth where several buses are, going around meeting their points. You can also wave them down if you see them on the street, which is a nice bonus. But they also operate the Dial-A-Ride, which is an ADA compliant off fixed route service. if you're within a mile of the original corridor, where they can provide door-to-door transportation for those that qualify for services. So anybody over 60 or somebody that's disabled.
Is there an income eligibility as well?
There's not an income eligibility on that.
Just those two?
Just those two. With that being said, they operate the Boston Hospital transportation bus that goes into Boston 2 times a week, and it also goes into Weymouth to South Shore Hospital. Those are rides that need to be booked ahead of time. And after that, we're looking for new services. GATRA is restricted by their hours of operation and being able to cross town lines for us, for the seniors that we're trying to service.
Well, you touched on something that, as a state rep, I'm just ending my fourth year now. But as a state rep, I've heard more and more around Plymouth. Transportation. I've heard it through you. You go to the ARC, you talk to them, you talk to the Life program in Pine Hills, you talk to other organizations, Department of Mental Health Services, you talk to them. Everyone has a need for the underserved, as we talked about in the opening, of the underserved population and people who are not getting that, as you said. So earlier this year, my office got a call from Melissa Kenny, our friend Melissa Kenny. And it's something we had been thinking about for a while. She said, you know, why don't we see if we can get all the groups together? Can you organize getting all the groups together and just sit around and talk about the issue, about transportation, and how do we get folks transported places? The Life program is a great example of this in the Pine Hills. The Life program, and they're part of this organization we're going to talk about. They have young adults that have intellectual disability issues, but are able to function and work. But the work schedules have to go around the GATRA bus line, which is usually a 9 to 5, 8 to 4 thing. But a lot of these jobs are later in the evening, so they struggle with that. So when Melissa called, we thought about it in my office, said, you know, let's do this. And we were able to get a hold of a number of organizations, probably a couple dozen, and I was shocked at the first meeting we had, how many people actually showed up. There was more groups out there than some groups I didn't even know about, but had the need. We had 4 or 5 meetings at that point, and then we met with Uber and Lyft, and it kind of took off from there, and then you got involved. So we actually started doing some homework after the first meeting. We found that Attleboro had this pilot project that they started last year. So let's talk about the pilot project that Attleboro put together and that we are now actually kind of mirroring with the help of GATRA.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So GATRA's worked with the CAR program, which was the Community Accessing Rides, out in the Attleboro and Norton area. Along the same lines of what we're doing here, they started out with 7 organizations that identified one need that they could all relate to, which was a lack of transportation in the area for the clients that they were servicing. From what I understand, Norton has 1 bus. And they have a large college there, and there's also the Toby Hospital that's local to the area. So after several meetings for their particular group, Joanne LaFerrera came in from GATRA and talked to them about the opportunity to apply for this Mass.DOT transportation grant, and how they could possibly partner with an online ride-hailing service to try to meet those needs. So lo and behold, the pilot project for Attleboro and Norton started to brew, and they were able to provide funds for each of those agencies. They raised money on their own to participate, which would guarantee them a certain number of rides for their clientele. And from that point, there was some money that came in through an amendment request, I believe, for the state to help fund this pilot project.
There was a grant and then some additional funds, yeah.
Absolutely. So their initial pilot...
And they weren't a lot. They were like maybe $10,000.
They had raised, I want to say you're correct, absolutely, it was about $10,000. There was the $10,000 amendment to the budget that came in from the state, and then the match grant.
The match grant, yeah.
So their initial pilot program was supposed to last from October through December, and it's actually still running. And they've been able to provide over 800 rides for their pilot program.
In less than a year.
In less than a year. One of the long-range sort of goals that they had was to assess where the needs were by collecting data through this process, which they're able to do when they book rides. And I can get more into that in greater detail if you'd like. However, they were able to identify that the hospital had a huge unmet need. And from the data they collected, they worked with GATRA and were able to put in a permanent bus stop there to help remediate the issues that they were having with transportation.
Wow.
So
let me ask Will, with your background, this is transportation, why'd you get involved?
Well, you know, it's an interesting story that Amy Naples of the Chamber contacted me about 7:30 on a Thursday night and said, hey, might you have a few minutes in the morning to facilitate a group of nonprofits? That's all I knew at the time. And I asked for a little background information because I like to be content driven, but really this was an opportunity to do what I do, which is facilitate meetings, keep people focused on the subject matter, keep the meetings going crisply, beginning and finishing on time, and then maybe building a culture of accountability, getting actions put in place. And I'm thrilled by that. So yeah, I cleared my schedule. I was able to move some coaching clients around and came in at 9:30, and the rest, I mean, that was the beginning of May.
Yeah. What'd you think when you first came and you saw the group of people around the
Well,
table?
I was blown away first by, I hardly knew anybody in the room, and it was a room full of people. There were 25 or 30 people at that first meeting I went to.
Yeah.
So it was pretty clear that there was a mission. There were people committed to it. Now it's just a question of trying to bring groups together and see if we can start to focus those groups towards the end, the mission. And that's what I saw as an exciting possibility. And you, of course, helped me in that first meeting by actually doing the facilitating, so I could at least get my feet wet. But after that, I believe it's starting to take off.
What are some of the organizations that are involved in this?
Oh, you're going to test my memory now. The South Shore Community Action Council.
Well, let's talk about Social Community Action first, because they stepped up in a big way.
They did. I think that one of the ways that we wanted to organize this is you really need a financial administrator to handle the funds that are coming in, to monitor the budgets for each individual entity that's involved, to make certain that the money going in for the transportation needs is managed closely. We have some challenges with any potential grants that come in as to how we allocate those grants to the various groups, but that financial administrator's got to watch every dollar and cent coming through. And Jack Cochio and Cheryl White of that group, Cheryl is going to be that financial administrator managing it all, and I think that that puts an aura of responsibility in place that assures that we have the optimal chance for this pilot succeeding.
Well, I won't test your memory of what organizations, because we touched upon some of them, but one of them that stood out to me that never would have thought of would have been in the room was the MAP Academy.
Sure.
Now the MAP Academy is the new program that's going in Industrial Park in the old Glen Electric building.
Sure.
That will start in the fall for young adults who didn't finish high school but now have an opportunity to do this.
Right.
But they have a need to be transported to the school.
Sure.
So they got involved. And that's how it evolved into not just Plymouth, but we're looking at the Greater Plymouth area.
Correct.
The boundaries of Plymouth, other communities like Kingston and Carver and and Wareham that actually touched the border
Plimpton
of.
as well, right?
Yeah, yeah. So, and the other thing that I thought was amazing is how many organizations do you think are involved, though? Is it 12
17
or so?
is in my head.
17?
It is
Okay, so
17,
okay.
it is.
It's amazing to get that many organizations involved. And then when these organizations, who most of them are funded by the state, started coming up with $1,000, $2,000, $5,000, because you have to match that $40,000. I think it's a $40,000 grant
That's what we're
that
shooting
GATRA
for,
just
right?
did for you. You got to match that as well. And within minutes, it seemed like there was like $25,000 on the table.
Correct. We're at 30,000 in terms of commitment, and we also have other organizations like the Plymouth Lions
Like
that
the
have no
Lions
skin
stepped
in
up,
this
yeah,
game.
yeah.
They're not going to. They don't have any transportation needs per
Yeah.
se, but they came up with $2,500, which is
Yeah.
a big help, and there'll be future opportunities like that as well.
Yeah, yeah. So let's talk about the grant a little bit. So the grant was filed in early June. As of this taping, it was early June. It should come out sometime in the early fall. You should hear about it. And then what happens at that point?
At that point, we're hoping to have all of the sort of internal structures, policies, and procedures in place so that there's clear guidance on how the funds can be used and distributed. If there are additional contributions from other community members, how we are going to utilize those funds, whether it's targeted for one specific population, one organization, or across the consortium for usage in general. So we're hoping to hear that we could start in September. It could be as late as January, from what I understand. And we will be looking for hopefully additional contributions to prolong the life of the program. This is a pilot, and it is going to be completely based on funds that are available. So we're working on some marketing. Sure. We're trying to determine how we're going to collect data, what data is relevant, who is going to require or would benefit from the information that we're going to be able to collect, developing policies and procedures.
This is a state grant, so there are requirements that folks must follow because it's a state grant, correct?
There are requirements.
And I think you pointed out at a meeting, and then we started looking around the room and say, well, MAP Academy's there. They probably don't qualify for this, but they still want to be involved. What are some of those requirements for the match?
For the match grant, as we currently understand the language, that the funds are to be used for those that are senior, disabled, and income eligible.
Okay. Do we know what the income eligible part of that is yet?
At this point, we do not. We are hoping that by tomorrow morning we'll receive some more information from our steering committee members.
Okay, good.
Yeah, so that's where in would come, what do we do with those extra contributed funds? Do they necessarily need to be matched by the grant? And if somebody doesn't meet all of the specific qualifications, we may have some veterans that aren't disabled, that aren't income eligible, but still need the transportation services. Can we use those funds that aren't necessarily targeted for one population to assist those that are in need?
But even in that case, for example, if the veterans group decides to put in some money to it, they can use that money at least for the program.
Correct.
And let's talk about the program itself. Who's going to operate it? Let's talk about Uber and Lyft and that process.
Well, I think as a result of the state grant we've applied for, we're going to give Uber and Lyft the opportunity to support the community in this.
Yeah, because we haven't talked about that, how this is going to work. It's not through GATRA, although they're doing the grant. It's actually through Uber and Lyft, and it's very ingenious.
It is. So it'll utilize the same smartphone technology and ordering as any other taxi share ride or ride share. So if somebody needs a ride and they're qualified and they're working through the entity that they're involved with, they'll call ahead for an appointment. And the taxi gives them, the ride share gives them the opportunity for flexibility, complete flexibility. We're talking about being able to address rides after 5 o'clock. We're talking about late into the evening if necessary. The weekends will be supplemented. And part of the pilot concept of this is, Uber and Lyft are just starting their operations here for the last few years, and there's a limited number of actual cabs doing this work. So they're ready to scale up and to support and to move us down into South Plymouth, which has scanty coverage right now, moves out to the other areas of Greater Plymouth. So for about a year, we hope that these funds will support us. I mean, we could start with $80,000 or $90,000 in the kitty to make this thing work. And if we can get all the operational details in place, which is what we're trying to organize now with subcommittee creation, we got plenty of people volunteering for that. So the questions you asked that we may not have answers for today, that's what we're going to focus on. The big committee meets every 3 weeks, and we're meeting next tomorrow. There's now a steering committee that both Jennifer and Casey Seaman are co-chairs on.
Casey's been big in this, by the way. I'm glad you mentioned her name. Yeah.
So those two individuals have more responsibility on their shoulders. I'm going to help them any way I can, but there are 4 others on this steering committee that'll help make sure that we focus on the right issues. And into it we go, and we'll give both Uber and Lyft a fair opportunity to figure out. Each entity, each nonprofit will choose which one they want to work with, or both. And somewhere during that year, we'll decide if one is better than the other and whether we should go with just one. But as long as we're potentially receiving the state grant, we're not going to go out into any kind of bidding situation. We'll give both those parties equal chance to succeed. So I think operationally it could work.
And I think it's a smart idea to go with both. I really do.
Yeah,
I think competition is probably good for people.
Sure.
So we'll keep both of them to do their
They're
best
both
for
good
everybody.
marketing
Yeah.
people, right? So they can
Yeah.
present great proposals. We won't know until they hit the ground and we find out whether they can answer calls in 7 or 8 minutes as they talk about.
Well, one of the things that Jennifer just brought up was the good part of you coming in as well as you knew to focus on subcommittees, and one of them you just mentioned was marketing. And it struck me when I heard that you were going to be doing marketing at a meeting. I'm like, why would they need to market? But then I realized why. Can you explain to people why marketing?
Well, marketing, maybe / communications. We want to make certain that the word gets out there. We also want to make certain that we're marketing to the right people. We can't be all things to all people.
Yeah,
so we've got to focus on those stakeholders that are out there that need this service. And that group would also probably organize continuing fundraising, looking for new grants, new opportunities, and being that outreach to groups like the Plymouth Alliance that don't have skin in the game, and explain to them how they can help and how that's a community-wide effort.
Yeah. And Attleboro, I think, struggled with that initially when they started the pilot. They weren't getting people to take the rides because nobody knew about it.
It started really slow, I believe, for Attleboro. I had the opportunity to speak with the director of the Norton Council on Aging, and she has yet to use through all of her funds that she has been allocated. I don't see that as being a struggle that we're going to have here.
Yeah.
We're focused on longevity. I really feel as though collectively in the group, we will be able to fill all the rides and use the funds that have been available to collect data, to do some more research and find out how we can prolong the program.
In the minute or so we have left, you said it's a pilot program. Do you see this as going to be a long-term venture? Because the state funds will go away after a year. You know, if you get them, I'm confident you'll get those funds. What happens at that point?
I'm
What do you
confident.
think?
I'm absolutely confident that the community, even if it's just Plymouth and the surrounding communities, will see the absolute gem that we've found, and we're going to replicate and really want to invest in their own community. Senior population's growing. Our seniors are aging in place. The need is going to get bigger, and this is a viable and actionable opportunity for us to meet those needs.
Yeah, I think the energy level in this group is so high. I think the odds of it not working or failing are very, very low. But I think that Attleboro's working. I think we understand the good and the bad, what's worked, what hasn't worked, and I think we're going to be very focused at making. So certainly there's a long-term perspective on this that goes beyond just a one-year pilot. Hopefully we'll move into full-scale operation in 12 months, and we expect that there will be other opportunities from the state and other grant organizations to bring money in. And I believe if it serves the purpose, then they will, in fact, contribute more from each nonprofit.
Well, you folks are doing a tremendous job. So proud of what you're doing, and we thank you for what you're doing. Thank you for getting involved with this and helping it go forward, and wish you nothing but the best of luck. And I'm sure we're going to hear more once you get the grant and hear about how this is going to work for the community. So thank you both so much for joining me today. Appreciate that. We hope you enjoyed today's show. Again, thanks to the folks at PAC TV for all they do. We will see you next time on State Matters.